Great. Hey all. Chapter 2, this is the last section. And we're going to talk, we're going to talk about the Department of Mental Health. Now, this is the lengthiest part of this chapter. There's like 5 pages. Okay, here we go. I'm really trying to do this before my son wakes up. The Department of Mental Health, or DMH, in Los Angeles County is the largest mental health department in the United States. The Los Angeles DMH is currently directly operating programs in over 85 sites countywide and providing contracted services to approximately 300 sites, such as schools, courts, and other organizations. Their mission is enriching lives through partnership designed to strengthen the community's capacity to support recovery and resiliency. Ugh, they stole my word. One of the other organizations DMH works with is law enforcement. The Department of Mental Health has very close ties to the LAPD through the SMART teams. These teams seem to be used more as public relations or PR tools for the LAPD rather than an outreach team to and for those who are living with mental illness. The relationship, I see a huge typo here with my font and format. The relationship of the Department of Mental Health and the LAPD is to implement the practice of system-wide mental assessment response teams, or SMART, as previously mentioned. These teams consist of one LAPD and one Department of Mental Health clinician who have had crisis intervention training and have learned de-escalation techniques to use when encountering a person with mental illness or in a crisis situation. Not like we did over here on this channel, though. Remember, they're still working with the pigs. SMART is a part of the Mental Evaluation Unit, or MEU, and all SMART teams are housed and deployed from the Central Division LAPD office, which is in the middle of Skid Row. It used to be a Hard Rock Cafe. In response to crisis, with the exception of calls made in Skid Row. So they're housed in Central Division, which again is literally smack dab in the middle of Skid Row. And that's where the LAPD keep a lot of their armored vehicles and like SWAT and shit. They have this huge parking garage, and it's literally in the middle. It's like on 6th and 5th Street, but it's literally right in the middle of Skid Row. But they don't. SMART does not respond to calls in Skid Row. This makes no fucking sense. While the SMART model has been praised on a national level as a successful model of community policing, insert handjob movement here, SMART only works when and if the triage team who sit with the dispatch communicate the necessity and importance of SMART deployment. So someone can call and request SMART, but they can send like LAPD straight up, right? Especially if it is in Skid Row. In theory, SMART seems to be a fair model with the following goals and responsibilities. Number 1, assist LAPD when they contact a person with suspected mental illness. Number 2, assist with intelligence function at critical incidents. Number 3, assist with psychologically impaired victims at disaster scenes. Number 4, prevent unnecessary incarceration and or hospitalization, which they definitely don't do. Number 5, provide intervention, referral, or placement for a person with mental illness to facilitate the speedy return of field officers and other field duties. So, like, that's the thing. They want to rush a de-escalation. You can't do that. That's not going to work. Anyway, number 6, provide alternative care in the least restrictive environment. In practice, there is a disconnect as SMART's deployment is determined and challenged by the first responder protocol, since the first responder to all emergency calls must be LAPD. The failure of the SMART model, as illustrated through the numbers obtained from the public records request to the LAPD requesting complete transparency in their theory and practice. These records report that of the 14,238 emergency calls made to the triage desk in which SMART was requested, or the dispatcher was made known of a mental health crisis ensuing, only 4,724, or 33% of calls made between March 14 and March 2015, were responded to by SMART. I'm going to say those numbers again. Over 14,000 emergency calls making it known that there was a mental health crisis, only 4,000, closer to 5,000, but were responded with SMART. Okay? While these numbers show the undeniable failure of the SMART model in policy and practice, the mayor, city council members, and the media continue to praise the LAPD for their work in the community policing, another hand job movement. The murder of the Skid Row resident Charlie Africa Kuning, my bad, he's from Cameroon, I apologize, I'm not saying that correctly. A mentally ill resident in Skid Row in which SMART was not deployed could have been prevented. Local media coverage used this tragic moment to distract the trusting populace from the facts of the killer police by praising the SMART model and almost completely dismissing the murder of Africa. The article reads, "The LAPD mental health detail represents a type of specialized policing that's gaining traction as law enforcement agencies nationwide struggle with how best to handle those in crisis." Literally, they shot this man and killed him. "The task is a challenging one. Minor encounters can quickly escalate out of control even when officers have had some mental health training, as was the case last week with the killing of a man by LAPD officers in Skid Row. The mental evaluation unit was not involved in the Skid Row incident. In, what are these called? Brackets? No, I don't know. Interestingly enough, the Los Angeles Police Commission just ruled the murder of Brother Africa in policy in February of 2016. I was there for that. Shit sucked. This article highlights the corruption of the relationship between the LAPD and the local media outlets, as this is an article favoring and praising the LAPD's training and model published a week after a murder of Africa. This story, used to gain support of the masses and reflect positive outcomes of the current system in which the community members are falling victim to the militarization of law enforcement agencies. This article, like many others, is a tool for the LAPD, is a tool the LAPD uses to dehumanize the homeless and those living with mental illness by completely deflecting the actuality of the situation in the news outlets. This article could have been viewed as a blatant cover-up of the continued militarization and deadly use of force the state has awarded law enforcement officers. While the Department of Mental Health has the ability to introduce real solutions with their county-wide presence and knowledge, the Department of Mental Health continues their corrupt relationship with the LAPD. This relationship produces a complete disconnect to their model when addressing and working with residents of Skid Row who have a mental illness or are experiencing a crisis, all while aiding in the dehumanization and criminalization of those who are most vulnerable. Examples of this intense disconnect of the LAPD and Skid Row and the demographics of the community are always apparent. In a meeting with Captain Orib and Lieutenant Mathis of the Central Division LAPD to discuss the reset program replacing SCI, both LAPD officers were unable to connect with the people of the community. I met with these motherfuckers. While discussing those suffering from mental illness, the cops constantly instilled rhetoric based on fear and threat. They advised that the residents with mental illness and residents with weapons were problems and issues to be dealt with. When offered a new frame of not dealing with a person with a mental illness, but rather working with the person by taking the time to understand their situation, both Captain Orb and Lieutenant Mathis were unwelcome to any changes. It was as though they could not comprehend the person with a mental illness or the person with a weapon as a human. Both officers continued to talk about the ways in which lethal force is sometimes inevitable. The dehumanization of those suffering with mental illness has become a scapegoat for the prison industrial complex, and it is a larger system that has failed. According to Ruth Wilson Gilmore in Golden Gulag, an examination of the prison expansion in California from the 1980s to the early 2000s is in response to the question, how and why then did California go about the biggest prison building project in the history of the world? In my view, prisons are partial geographic solutions to political economic crisis organized by the state in which itself is in crisis. This is particularly true in Skid Row, where the criminalization of homelessness, broken windows policing are used to move and control bodies and prevent agency. It is under the same circumstances that the resiliency of the Skid Row community is unscathed to any other community regarding the unity and care for one another. The systemic oppression that meets each individual struggling to survive in the wake of neoliberal capitalist agenda designed to destroy for the gain of political, economic, and social power for the elite is the same collective experience, producing empathy and love for one another to ensure survival and change. Skid Row is home to the highest concentration of mentally ill residents in the nation, as well as the highest concentration of police in the world. If the only solution our society offers for conflict resolution and crisis intervention is the ever-expanding militarized police state, the stories of fatal interactions with the police are not going to stop. There need to be alternatives. There needs to be change. There needs to be a continued conversation and organizing to produce the changes needed to ensure the war on the homeless, the war on the mentally ill, and the war on the poor are stopped. After examining these relationships and tactics of language and rhetoric to uphold political ideology, it is evident that the expansion of the social behaviors being pathologized is working to the favor of the local government agencies and law enforcement entities in Los Angeles. Conversations and actions to resist and fight the powers that are killing communities are present in Los Angeles. Community-based objectives, rejections, ideas, and solutions are breaking down the political walls as people from the community are showing up and speaking out in City Hall and the Police Commission and in the amphitheater that hosts the Board of Supervisors. The community is not reluctant to visit and call on the offices of the city and county officials or show up in the mayor's front yard to demand their voices be heard. The community is standing strong against these policies. The community of Skid Row is strong and resilient and speaking loud and clear about the changes needed. The next chapter will explore the organizations standing at the vanguard of these conversations, the Los Angeles Community Action Network. The next chapter informs readers of the power of community-based organizing and action by examining the countless avenues that have led to victories around homelessness and mental illness for the past decade. All right, that's it for Chapter 2. Chapter 3 is entitled I Can, You Can, We Can, LA Can, Fight for Human Rights.